go. A good Thursday morning to you, Grenada, and the rest of the world. Hey, folks, thank you very much for joining us for today's edition of Good Day, Grenada. Just coming up on 1 minute after 9 o'clock. Got an interesting program for you today. Your bro is under fire. Yeah, man. We're going to take a look at the rundown and see what I'm talking about. By the way, he's bright and early this morning, bright-eyed and bushy-tailed. T.F. Finley is already saying hi to his family this morning. And folks, let's take a look at the rundown because it's going to be an interesting morning. First of all, George Grant and Ewart Layne is the caption of an opinion piece which has been written by one Mr. Fitzroy Louison. Yeah, he has sent that to the media here in Grenada. One of them sent it on to me. And I decided, hey, listen, fair is fair, man. Give the man a voice. You give everybody else a voice. Why not him? So hang in there. You'll find out what that's all about. We'll get to that in a wee bit. Then the Hubbards yard sale. Huh? A little note here for you from Hubbards. They've got a yard sale which gets underway today. And we'll be going, I think until the 3rd, next Wednesday? Yeah, find out about that. And, of course, you have your national report this morning. But I guess what everybody's all saddled up and waiting for this morning is a regular Thursday morning appearance by none other than Mr. Allan Baczynski. Yeah, Allan's going to be joining us in just a wee bit. Okay? However, first things first. First things first. Let's get down to brass tacks. Oh, by the way, Kipling. Kipling's bright-eyed and bushy-tailed this morning. He's up early saying, good morning, Mr. G and Mr. Chester. And he's sending his blessings to everyone as well. The following, my dear friends, is an opinion piece written by Mr. Fitzroy Louison. And I quote, I listened to the TV program, George Grant on Sunday. Actually, the program, folks, is called Sundays with George Grant, okay? I listened to the TV program, George Grant on Sunday, in which he invited Ewart Layne to his studio, and I was increasingly sickened by what George was doing. Okay? Setting aside Layne's role in the murder of Bishop, mention was made of Layne's ill treatment of others. Or rather, it was alluded to in a pussyfooting manner. Layne claimed to have apologized many times. For this, Grant afforded him the accolade, you have balls. Perhaps Grant doesn't know that Layne is accused of slicing the testicles and penis of Winston Broco Simon of Tivoli with a razor blade. Telling him he will never have woman again. And who is Layne to thank for having his own balls? This accusation is contained in a statement made by Winston Simon to Christopher Williams, member of the Advisory Council, on May 14, 1984, and sent to Governor General Sir Paul Scoon. Instead of apologizing for having done this, Layne claims that he was not the person who interrogated Simon. Yet, this is how Simon described the beginning of the interrogation, and I quote, Randy Bob of the PRA came to my home and told me that Captain Layne wanted to talk to me. On arrival at Pearl's, I was handcuffed by Lester Redhead, Goat. Layne put his arm around me and said, "Let us walk." He asked me if I knew him. I told him I did, and he told me he was Captain Layne, otherwise known as Headache. Does this look like a case of mistaken identity? It is hard to believe that anyone could survive the injuries inflicted upon Simon's head and body, but he did. However, he was a physical and mental wreck and could not live a normal life. He died a few years ago, in his 50s. By his own admission, Grant was not here during the Revolution. Had he been, I feel sure he would think differently from the way he does now, having, as he does, essentially, an outsider's view. Not only in Winston Simon's case does Layne get a mention. He was listed in the accounts of many torture victims, although not all of them made official statements as Simon did. Take the case of Mikey James of Mount Rill. About 8 years ago, he was lying in pain on his bed in his mother's house. She was aged and still living in England. He had only his son to look after him, who could not do much. The smell from the bucket of pee filled the room, unemptied. Why could Mikey not get up and empty the bucket? Because two PRA soldiers, Lester Goat Redhead and Ewart Headache Layne, had, according to Mikey, put him to lie down in what they told him was his own grave. But instead of burying him, Redhead told him, "Put your effing hands here." Upon which he brought the rifle butt down with all his force on Mikey's fingers. The damaged nails could be seen over 30 years later. Then Ewart Layne fired some shots into Mikey's feet. From that time, he could never walk properly, but remained lying on his bed in constant pain. Is saying sorry enough? I wish Goat and Headache could be in that room with Mikey. I wish they could donate a part of their earnings to buying him the pain-killing drugs and food that he needed. But no. Instead, he was taken to an old people's home in Guave, where he died in his 50s. As far as I'm concerned, to earn forgiveness for such evil acts, the person must first repent. This means he must describe the evil acts he has committed and name the person whom he inflicted them on. Then he must say he repented of his sins, and not say we're all sinners. Only then can he ask for forgiveness, and it is not a given right that it will be granted to him. I noticed that Layne said to Grant that he does not need to call names. Why? Of course, he must name the people he has so hideously wronged. In my experience, people who smile all the time when they're speaking are not sincere. And Ewart Layne is very much a case in point. It is hard to believe that he is sincere as he speaks of his remorse if he is smiling all the time. He appears unable to speak without the smile being switched on. So, George gave him a platform from which Layne tried to project an image of a basically decent guy. He even thanked his Catholic school for making him the wonderful person that he is. How does he reconcile Marxism with a belief in God? George never asked key questions such as this. Pilgrims, pilgrims, pilgrims. You just heard the text of a piece that was written by Mr. Louison, Fitzroy Louison. I expect that you're going to see that in all of the newspapers this week. And I thought, since it was sent to me yesterday by one of the newspapers that had received this, which I do appreciate, by the way, thank you very much, I felt, to be fair, I too should publish it. I have no qualms about that. I also have no qualms about what the person is saying. But I'll tell you, I have no remorse about what I did on Sunday. I did it with a pure and contrite heart. Okie doke. Let me see. As I speak to you, he's kind of early this morning. Take a look. I'm not sure exactly what the T-shirt says. I see great minds drink. Great minds drink alike. There he is, Mr. Mr. Brzezinski. Thank you for being early this morning, sir. We're going to get to you in just a wee bit, but first we're going to take a break, and then we'll go to today's edition of the National Report, which you might also wish to listen to and critique, like our staff out there, our crew out there. And by the way, good morning, TF. Good morning, Kipling. Good morning, Margaret. Good morning, Benedict, Peter, and Sharon. Everybody's here this morning. Let's take a break, and we'll come on back with the National.
Hey, Lynn.
Hey, neighbor.
Here's the bill I asked you to pay for me.
How did you get your electricity bill to be so low?
For one, we size our transformers just for what we need. And we unplug transformers, chargers, and other devices when they're not in use. We also replaced our light bulbs with LEDs.
They burn less energy, right?
Much less. I even replaced the seal on my refrigerator door to keep the cold air in.
And Grenlec is always advising us not to open the fridge too often.
That's right. And my family washes and irons in bulk.
With fuel prices changing all the time, how do you know if it is working?
We pay attention to the usage history table. Over time, our average usage has decreased.
So while Grenada can't control fuel prices, I can conserve energy and save money.
Grenlec, energizing our Grenada.
Juve chocolates, cocoa nibs, and cocoa balls from Diamond Estate Grenada are now available at Amazon.com, Amazon.ca, Amazon.co.uk, and GrenadaMarket.com. Try the sensational touch of nutmeg and a touch of ginger chocolates, 75% dark and rich, 100% pure cocoa, and their 60% dark and sweet chocolate bars today. Amazon Prime members enjoy free shipping on these orders in the USA, Canada, and Europe. GrenadaMarket.com. When you can't come to the island, the products of the island will come to you.
Start the stride to a healthy lifestyle at the 2019 annual Pump It Up Family Fun Walk. There'll be more fun, more smiles, and more prizes for families and friends. Join us in Carrickoo on April 7th at 4 p.m. as we walk from the Harveyvale playing field to the Hillsborough tennis court. And in Grenada on April 28th at 4 p.m. from the Montrouge playing field to the National Cricket Stadium. Packages cost $20 per person for up to 2 individuals and $15 per person for groups of 3 or more. Come out in your numbers to help us raise funds towards re-establishing the Carlton Home.
Welcome home.
Just before I fire up the GIS, Donna Joseph has now joined us saying good morning to George and to her favorite guest. Who that? Oh, Mr. Paszynski, excuse me. Yes, Mr. Paszynski. Swelling up the guy's head. Anyhow, Mr. B will be with you shortly. Kipling is saying, why do we ask for God's forgiveness if we cannot forgive others? TF is saying, I am here wondering why didn't Fitzroy call into the program and pose his question to Layne? He appears to have info to comfort the man. To confront the man. So maybe he should have called in. Gem FM, hey Gem, good morning. Gem the Sheriff Caliste is saying, good for you, George. And Sharon's also with us as well. Folks, here comes your national report.
Grenada charting the course for a more effective response post-natural disasters. We'll have details to this story and more in the National Report. With the details to the news for Wednesday, March 27th, I am Rikisha St. Louis. Grenada is charting the course to correct errors of the past in damage assessment and needs analysis following natural disasters. Representatives of the private and public sectors were engaged on Wednesday in a planning workshop geared towards putting strategies in place for effective response. The government of Grenada is collaborating with the United States government through USAID to provide support and funding. U.S. Chargé d'Affaires Stephen Fram stressed the importance of analysis.
Analysis of how best to respond immediately following a natural disaster. So in this group, there are people from the utility sector, from the tourism sector, from government, from telecommunications sector. So all of these different sectors that are so important to responding after a disaster are here today to talk and plan and prepare and think through what it is that they need to accomplish, what they need to have in place, what structures they need after a disaster happens.
Minister with responsibility for disaster management, Dr. the Honorable Senator Winston Garwe, says Grenada must learn from its own experiences and most recently those of its neighbors. He said more emphasis must be placed on resilience and speedy recovery.
This means that the government and all stakeholders should be particularly concerned as to how quickly we bounce back after any impact and to be able to serve our constituents with the required services needed. The onus, therefore, is on us, government and stakeholders, to build resilience in our country, our businesses, and our people. This requires significant investment in strengthening our infrastructure, developing new policy frameworks, and developing the capacity of our people.
The Disaster Analysis and Assessment Workshop aims to correct the errors of the past. That's according to Acting Coordinator of NADMA, Sylvan McIntyre. He said too many mistakes were made in 2004 and 2005 when Hurricanes Emily and Ivan struck the island.
All sectors, according to the national plan, who has a responsibility for the Dana process, to have come together, set out do the assessment, compile the information together, identify the extent of the damage, areas damaged, what were damaged in categories, put a rough cost to that damage. Statistics, Ministry of Finance, according to our national plan, is supposed to be provided with that information for all of the sectors involved, and therefore would give a preliminary estimate as to cost of damage within a 48-hour period that should have been done. And thereafter, a thorough assessment had to have been conducted and create a macro estimate as to what has happened in Grenada.
Multi-destination tourism and collaborative marketing initiatives for niche tourism. These two elements, according to OECS Director General Dr. Didicus Jules, are key to tackling the subject of slow tourism growth in the OECS. With only 2% growth per annum, the OECS is said to be falling behind Latin America and the Caribbean. Addressing the virtual media launch and public consultation of the OECS draft strategy on Tuesday, Dr. Didicus Jules said OECS member states need to find creative ways to package and offer attractions that will lure tourists to their destinations.
Across the OECS, there are a number of unique products being developed by innovative young people having to do with adventure tourism, such as hiking. In St. Lucia, for example, at the Gros Piton, you have a hiking trail that has been cut, and the community at the base of the Gros Piton has now taken a sort of have a sense of ownership of the management of that site. So they're now looking at more value-added stuff like creation of souvenirs, doing social media photographs and so on around the visits and the hike to the pitons. So using the natural resource in the community, together with things like creation of local juices and health drinks and so on for persons climbing. So in expanding community participation in tourism is vital. And this is one of the areas that we want to put a lot of emphasis on, because the opportunities for community involvement in tourism are many. It spans a range of opportunities from entertainment, culture, food, events. So these are areas that we want to develop.
On the subject of transportation, the OECS Director General says they are acutely aware that resolving this issue is key to growing competitiveness in the region. The Caribbean Development Bank has published a study on the challenges of transportation in the region, which pointed out that while air travel into the region has significantly increased, there has been a significant fallback in intra-regional travel. A main reason for this, the cost of intra-regional travel, reliability and scheduling.
We've been, in the past few months, been working closely with the World Bank, the UN, ECLAC, UNDP, and a number of other entities, CBB, as a working group looking at the question of sea transportation, a ferry, expansion of ferry services across the OECS to make inter-island travel, not just of people but goods, more facilitate that much in a much more cost-effective manner.
The OECS development strategy outlines key strategies that will be pursued by the member states of the Eastern Caribbean Economic Union over the 10-year period ending 2028. The strategies are developed around three mutually reinforcing pillars: generating economic growth, promoting human and social well-being, and sustainable use of natural endowments. It seeks to target growth of between 3 and 5% and reduce unemployment in OECS member countries by about 25% over the life of the strategy. This is the National Report. More news after the break.
After 4 weeks of preliminary qualifiers, after 4 zonal meets, it all comes down to this one incredible day of exciting track and field action. It's the National Secondary School Games Grand Finals. The Eastern, Western, Northern, and Southern zones will face off. Randy James Athletic Stadium, Friday, April 5th from 10 a.m. Excitement, tension, drama. The athletes will throw further, jump higher, and run faster. And inspirational halftime performances from Dash, Vaughn, and Mr. Killer. Witness poetry in motion, the fluidity of form and class. National Secondary School Games, the championship. Come feel the rhythm of the games.
Welcome back. Grenada has reiterated its support within CARICOM for dialogue on the ongoing political and economic crisis in Venezuela. A delegation of foreign ministers from CARICOM met recently with Venezuela's opposition leader, Juan Guaido, via video conference as part of continued efforts by CARICOM to facilitate a peaceful resolution to the crisis. Following the meeting, CARICOM issued a statement saying, and I quote, CARICOM foreign ministers acknowledged the meeting as a significant initial step in a series of potential engagements that should unfold by agreed mechanisms within the framework of the Constitution of Venezuela and the rule of law. The meeting provided a greater understanding of Mr. Guaido's views and perspectives on how to move forward in search for peaceful solutions, as well as his willingness to take part in meaningful discussions, unquote. During the government's weekly post-cabinet briefing on Tuesday, Foreign Minister Honorable Peter David says CARICOM has an interest in the outcome in Venezuela.
That the future stability of Venezuela is in the interest of CARICOM, and that while we understand that there are difficulties within Venezuela, CARICOM's position remains that these matters should be resolved by the Venezuelan people coming together. And we offer our good offices through the Montevideo mechanism to broker a dialogue. And we hope that the meeting in Barbados on Saturday between the foreign ministers with the chair of CARICOM present, the foreign minister of the chair of CARICOM present, can go some way to assisting in brokering that deal.
Finally, the Ministry of Youth Development, Sports, Culture and the Arts says it is committed to the further development of local athletes in all disciplines. The commitment came during the presentation of sporting equipment donated by former ambassador to China, Mr. Dennis Antwine, to the Ministry of Youth Development, Sports, Culture and the Arts. Sports Minister Senator Norland Cox used the opportunity to talk about some of the plans in store to ensure sportsmen and women are provided with the opportunities they need to be able to compete at all levels.
We are working to ensure that our facilities continue to improve. We have currently here, we are in our athletic stadium. We are working towards establishing an aquatic center for our swimmers. We are working towards establishing an indoor facility for basketball, netball, and other indoor sporting events.
Mr. Keda Vento spoke on behalf of Mr. Dennis Antwine. She relayed his desire to continue to support the country's sportsmen and women.
Last January, members of the GLLA, the Grenada Leadership and Learning Academy, made contact with the Embassy of Grenada in China, informing us about communication with one of Grenada's listed honorary consuls in Asia. GLLA is a non-profit organization based in Grenada. Today, I am pleased to acknowledge the generous and timely in-kind donation made by the honorary consul that would benefit the Ministry of Sports, its facilities, and sporting activities in Grenada.
That story just ended the national report for today, Wednesday, March 27th. Recapping the top story. Grenada charting the course for a more effective response post-natural disasters. On behalf of all those who made this newscast possible, I am Rikisha St. Louis saying thank you for joining us. Until next time.
righty, folks, there you have it. That's last night's edition of the National Report from the GIS. Now, Peter Bishop says, I give up when it comes to the NNP report. That's what he describes this thing as, the NNP report. T.F. Richard says, here we are advertising the National Secondary School Games, and together with it, a soca show. Then, tomorrow, we would hear the same ministry chastising the principals and teachers for the children's behavior. God help us all. And that's not all TF has to say. Just going back a little bit, he says, what else is new in terms of the tourism package? Stop only talking about what we need to do and have to do, and do it, for heaven's sakes. We always want to place emphasis, but we are never willing to get around to emphasizing it. Hey, TF. Folks, beginning today at the old Motor Building on the Carnage, Hubbards, they'll be holding a yard sale at which they'll be offering the best prices in town. Great deals on appliances, builder's hardware, furniture, tiles, and a whole lot more. This will run for a limited time, starting today, right through to the 3rd of April. That's next Wednesday. Today and Monday through Wednesday of next week, it runs from 9 o'clock in the morning to 5 in the afternoon. And tomorrow it runs from 9 a.m. until 6. On Saturday from 9 a.m. only until 3 o'clock. So once again, that's the Hubbards Yard Sale at the old Motor Building on the Carnage from today right through until the 3rd of April. Yes, here's something else. Jem, the Sheriff Kelly, says, George, he's talking here about the piece that was written about George Grant and Ewart Layne. Jem says, George, a lot of these so-called God-fearing Christians need to take a closer look at the Lord's Prayer that they so often say when they pray. He says, whatever happens to forgive 70 times 7? And where in their Bible does it require a person to list the names of the people they have wronged? I didn't think about that. That's an interesting point. Okay, Mr. B has been sitting there very patiently listening. I'm sure he's going to have something to say about this as well when we get to him. But first...
Grenadian General Insurance Company, strength and stability. Grenadian General Insurance Company, tell your friends, tell your family. We cover householders comprehensive, motor and even fire too. Contractors all risk burglary, public liability, professional indemnity, directors liability, and wait, we still have more. Come and find out more what you're waiting for.
We are located on Scott Street, St. George's. For more information, call 440-2434.
Tell everybody.
Conveniently located in the Grand Shopping Center, for over 40 years, Food Fair has provided quality service at affordable prices. Now, grocery shopping is made easier and more convenient from the Food Fair web store.
Hey, babe. Listen, I need you to go down to Food Fair to get some groceries.
All right, no problem. Right away.
Thanks, babe. What are you doing? You're supposed to be going Food Fair to get a grocery, man.
I am, but didn't you know you can order your groceries online from the Food Fair web store?
Are you serious?
Of course. All you have to do is just to log on to www.foodfair.gd with credit card in hand, and with an order of $100 or more, Food Fair Grenadans will deliver up to 3 miles away. And you don't even have to worry about your information, you know. Their safety measures are excellent.
So hold on. You just order online and Food Fair will deliver to you?
Yep.
Oh, baby, better hurry up and order, man.
I already did. They should be here any minute now.
Enjoy easy online shopping anytime from your home or office from the Food Fair web store. Food Fair, where you can fill your baskets without emptying your pockets.
Alrighty, here we go. Time to say good morning to Mr. Baczynski there. Mr. B. Let me see if we can get him up here. Mr. B, good morning, sir. How are you?
Good morning. I'm well.
You're well.
I am rested.
After?
The kite fell.
You know, Mr. B sent me, I guess this is because a couple of days ago we were talking about the kite flying that goes on overnight and the damn buzz. Mr. B sent me an audio of a kite just buzzing. What time of the day was that recording done, sir?
1:40.
1:40 p.m. So in daytime. Okay. What? Well, thank you very much. That's the point I was just about to make. I don't have an issue with them making that kind of noise in the daytime, but man, at night, sometimes, you know, the wind comes right over us down here from Montgelou, and that's where the kites decide to hang out. Richmond. Yeah, I would imagine not. Mr. B, I don't know what's going on, sir. I'm hearing you. Sorry, I'm seeing you, but I'm not hearing you at all. Eh? Okay, yeah, I'm hearing you here, but I don't seem to see you going out over the air, and that's a little bit curious for me. Folks, let me know if you're hearing AB out there. Yeah, there it is. Yeah, well, obviously, everybody here is saying, Benedict is saying, could you put up Mr. B's audio? Margaret says, George, you're frozen, and Allan's audio is gone. Bishop Peter Bishop says, audio for Mr. B. Yeah. Why is Mr. B not hearing this? Keep talking, AB. Keep talking.
Okay. Well, I'm reading from the newspaper.
Yes.
CARICOM maintains non-interference approach to ongoing Venezuela crisis.
Okay.
So you can hear me?
Yes, I can hear you now.
Okay. So can we proceed back to the kite?
Yes, you can go back to the kite.
Okay. So the kite that was making all the noise fell in my yard. The string is there. It crosses a couple of my fruit trees. It goes across the road onto the electricity lines. As a result, I'm not going to touch the string. However, if anybody has lost a kite, please feel free to come and collect your string. I don't know where the kite is, but feel free to come and collect the string. However, you will have to speak to my dogs.
What kind do you have? German Shepherds?
No. Some children were passing one day and were looking at the dogs, and they decided that one of them is a Rottweiler.
A Rottweiler.
And the other one is so big it must be a mix. I didn't inquire mix with what? Maybe a goat, a cow, or something because of its size.
Okay.
But anyway.
Okay. Now, but anyhow,
So,
for those who may have missed what you were saying earlier on, we don't have, at least I don't have an issue with the kites making their noise in the daytime, but a lot of these people leave their kites up overnight, and at 3 o'clock in the morning, 3 o'clock in the morning, that's all you hear. Bzzz. And Allan decided to actually record one of those. He recorded that one in the afternoon and sent it to me. That's what we were talking about. Go ahead, AB.
Yes, so let's talk about royal visits.
And romantic walks along Grandad's Beach.
Well, you see, I'm going to start abroad because apparently the Emperor of Trump Tower invited some heads of government in the region to his private residence at Mar-a-Lago Golf Resort in Florida.
Mm-hmm.
And we have seen photographs of these men sitting like mendicants, supplicants, and beggars outside of a door, but the door says exit, so it's difficult. I don't know whether they were on their way in or their way out. But it is interesting that when they sat at the table with the emperor, he welcomed them, said he was glad that they were there and so forth, and then he explained for the benefit of the media that he expected that they would be holding wide-ranging discussions, and he expected that they would probably talk about Venezuela and a lot of other things. Now, what I find difficult to understand is how can heads of independent countries go to the private residence of the emperor from Trump Tower, and apparently nobody knew what the agenda was. In fact, you have heard Prime Minister Gonzalez of St. Vincent in commenting on this disgraceful example of, well, I can't say it on air, but this disgraceful example. And he was saying that what were the results? The results, according to Dr. Gonzalez, as reported by the Prime Minister of Jamaica, were promising. And that's the word he used. The results were promising. Does anyone begin to understand what that could possibly mean? And to add insult to injury, what I saw on the media coverage was after the Emperor of Trump Tower decided that he had spoken for enough because he ran out of vocabulary. He is not known for having an extensive vocabulary. He repeats the same words. All these wonderful people who are doing a great job in their respective countries. But then he turned to the Prime Minister of St. Lucia, apparently not knowing his name or what country he represented, and said, okay, let's start with you. Now that in itself is disrespectful. Let's start with you. And then Prime Minister Chasney actually answered by saying how grateful he was to be invited to Mar-a-Lago. I mean, come on, let's get serious. And the Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago, quite right, was the first one who started by saying that he doesn't know what is going on there. And anybody who suggests to him that Trinidad and Tobago was in any way diminished by their non-invitation is clearly wrong. Because why did they go there in the first place? What was the agenda? As Gonzalez says, what were the results? And frankly, none of them is authorized to speak for CARICOM.
Exactly.
And the Prime Minister of Antigua followed that up. Now, he is not one noted to put in any kind of brakes on him out anyhow. But I think he's correct in this instance that these people could not possibly be conceivably thought of as spokespersons for CARICOM. But they went for their visit. Now, and the results were promising, according to the Prime Minister of Jamaica. So that leads us nicely into our own visit. We had a royal visit now. We didn't go, they came. I remember there was a calypso in the 60s by Kitchener. Ting tang, darling, the queen and the Jew coming, oh Lord.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know what precisely is the cost of hosting a royal visit, but I am under the impression that we pay a substantial amount for the privilege of hosting them. I don't know what the results will be. Are we going to get money? I don't know. But what was interesting was to see that any number of old communists were there in the receiving line. Two in particular struck my attention. They were not charged for treason as a result of their activities in 1979, but they ought to have been. And yet you see them lining up to greet His Royal Highness and his consort. Whatever happened to principle is principle. Could they not have done like Pastor Dr. Winston Garraway and had to go to the bathroom or something like that in order to not have to attend? So these are individuals who have, I don't know, I suppose they're very proud. I saw some others, including individuals who were, I don't want to say bodyguards, but close associates of the late revolutionary prime minister. They were there too. They put on jacket and tie. They went to shake the hand of imperialism, the same imperialism that they blamed for the demise of the revolution. I don't know what next we will see. Ants belly? Has it been that long? So I would hope that in the spirit of the 3 months of observances in this month of March, the 3 months of observances of the 40th anniversary of the coup d'etat, that we will get to hear and see more of these strange events, because all I can say is it looks as though these are the signs of the end of times.
At last. Mr. B, you know, because you were on a roll, I did not want to interrupt you, sir, but there are some comments that have been coming in here which I'm going to share with you right now. First of all, Richard St. Bernard says, excellent assessment, Allan. He's talking about the assessment you did a little while ago about the CARICOM ministers meeting with the Dons. Donna Joseph says, Mr. B, those prime ministers were sitting outside of their master's door like dogs, awaiting scraps from the table.
I don't like the particular analogy, to tell you the truth, but because my dogs are very well fed, I treat them properly.
Donna, you walked right into that. Put that in your pipe and smoke it. TF says, Donald Trump can only be classified with Christopher Columbus. When he ran for election, he didn't know where he was going. When he won, he didn't know where he was.
Well, I'm glad you brought up Christopher Columbus, because I think our Minister of Foreign Affairs finds himself in a similar situation. He went to Serbia and he discovered that there are 5 or more Grenadian students there. Apparently, they went there in 2011 when he was a Minister of Government. And apparently, they got lost. So he was highly surprised to find out that there were 5 or more Grenadian students in Serbia.
Well, now he knows. Now he knows.
So he like Christopher Columbus too. He discovered that there were Grenadians in Serbia.
Gem FM, the Sheriff Khalees says, embarrassing to say the least. I noticed that they were not engaged in any conversation. These men are weak leaders and need to be voted out. So says Gem FM. Sharon Elizabeth Roberts, on a slightly different subject, says, in 2012, because of a kite flying over my house, for 4 days and nights.
I remember that.
I could not sleep. On the 4th day, I passed out and ended up in hospital because of the lack of sleep and the stress caused by the constant noise. I had not a heart attack, but heart failure, which caused me to become diabetic. Far-reaching impact, eh?
Indeed. And every year, Grenlec puts out these notices about kites. The aviation authorities put out notices about kites. I am not exactly in a flight path, but from time to time, I guess depending on meteorological conditions, the Liat planes do fly fairly close overhead. And they will have to avoid kites.
Yeah, yeah. Donna goes on to say, Mr. B, only Mr. Ralph Gonzalez had the belly to speak out on the disrespect that some of the CARICOM ministers showed to the rest of the CARICOM and the true discord amongst CARICOM.
I'm sorry, he's not the only one. I mentioned Prime Minister Rowley of Trinidad and Tobago.
Yeah.
And also the Prime Minister Gaston Brown of Antigua.
Donna Joseph says, and genuflecting before the Duke and his consort, some almost bowed so low I was afraid they might be booted. They might have booted the floor. There's a picture that was put out. It's sort of portrait with the President of the Senate and the Speaker of the House on either side of the royal couple, and I thought that was so amusing. I see that and I say to myself, then what the hell was all this brouhaha about shedding the bonds of colonialism? I mean,
yes, but having said that, I want to make two things clear. One is, I made reference earlier to the fact that at least two of the individuals up there were not charged for treason as a result of their activities on March 13, 1979. And with this latest reference to the Speaker of the House and the President of the Senate taking a photograph with the royal party, I just want to make it clear that those are not the two individuals I was referring to. It's only one of them.
Okay, I give you three guesses and the first two don't count. Now,
and the second thing I wanted to make clear. In the event that anyone should conclude that I am making these statements because of sour grapes, in that I was not invited, I can tell you that in fact I was invited. But Grenada being Grenada, I was invited in the capacity of, in a capacity which I no longer hold. So I had to, being a person of principle, I regretfully declined the invitation and advised them they needed to update their records.
You mean you couldn't do that photo op, Mr. Bashinsky?
Anyway, we have to continue to laugh.
Jem the Sheriff says, yeah, they're all a bunch of jokers. Margaret says, for me, the funniest of the pics was that of the cabinet with Chester Humphreys sitting right next to them. And then she puts a lot of emoticons up here with herself laughing and crying. Benedict Cador says, Mr. B, you forgot to mention those fighting colonialism.
And imperialism.
Ray Roberts. Hey, Ray is with us this morning. Ray says, Allan, you are much too bright, exposing the converted communists to Grenada's newest capitalist. They could be converted to whatever comes.
I think they used a phrase for people like that. They were called right opportunists.
Right opportunist. Okay.
I'm not entirely sure the meaning of it, but the phrase was used repeatedly when they were considering heavy manners against individuals.
All right. Laurie says, Allan, I like you. You are a true realist.
Anthony, I thought I was a comedian. but I believe that many comedians base their routines on reality.
That's true.
This is why it's so important to look at breaking news.
No, but you're right about the comedians basing their stuff on reality. That's where a lot of the humor comes from, eh? The fact that they're basing their comedy on reality. That's true.
Yep.
Anthony says, I saw that Mr. B, a certain feller in his revolutionary day. I saw that, Mr. B. A certain feller in his revolutionary days would never sit with British royalty.
and there were at least two of them there.
Yeah. The hypocrisy of life. Louise Grant says, so what? Time changes, and so do the opinions of people, politically, religiously, and otherwise. So says Louise Grant.
Fair enough.
I'm surprised I even got a comment out of you on that one. Donna Joseph says, ha ha ha, Mr. B, I know that your dogs are well-mannered and fed, also well-treated from the description that you gave earlier of your dogs. Well, are your dogs well-trained and well-mannered? Do they bring your shoes?
Unless they are provoked.
Okay. Ray Roberts is responding to Louise here by saying, Louise, that's cheap. Pele Darbo says, Allan, you're good. Even though an attempt was made to emasculate you in the early 70s, I admire your testicular fortitude.
It is very clear that individual has read the report of the Duffers Commission of Inquiry into the breakdown of law and order in Grenada in the period of November 1973. I'm glad that people still read it.
T.F. Richard says, we have to remember that the new meaning of CARICOM is Caribbean Confusion Meetings. So CARICOM is like an acronym for Caribbean Confusion Meetings. I think that's what he's saying. The President of the Senate would visit the Roman Catholic Pope next. Oh boy. You never know, TF. You never know. Gem FM says, these former leaders of the revolution have not done anything to convince me now that they were committed revolutionaries. Because if they were, they would have taken a different approach.
Well, talking about a different approach, George Brizan in his book, Grenada Isle of Conflict, did suggest that regardless of the economic plans that they had, because the whole thrust was ideologically based, that they could not deal with failure. And as a result, they resorted to the behavior of leaders of any sort of cult. You will recall what happened with Jim Jones in the jungles in Guyana. When they couldn't, when he couldn't hold it together any longer, everybody got Kool-Aid to drink. And so, similarly, one might argue that somewhere between July to the middle of or early October of 1983, they started drinking Kool-Aid at the highest levels. The Kool-Aid was more Leninism, more ideology, and heavy manners. So that's what happened to them. This is the danger of substituting cults for political democracy.
Yeah. Moving along, AB. Fitzroy Adams says, I wonder why our Prime Minister didn't say anything. And he's referring to the CARICOM meeting with Trump. Did you hear him?
I think he was looking for $1 million to remit to Liat.
Okay. Fitzroy, hold on a sec here. Laurie Bridgman says, George, instead of having the national report, why don't we have Mr. B to update us on what's going on locally and internationally? I think the people would be more informed. AB?
That's a heavy responsibility. Remember, I am taking the light approach. I'm trying to bring humor into it. So the national report is serious business. And you could take that with a prong of salt.
You know, I understand what this person is saying. And, since this program essentially deals with good governance, even though we laugh a lot, I do hope that people take the stuff that we're saying here very seriously. Because I don't think you always need to be abrasive and belligerent when you're trying to get a point across. And so, B, from your point of view, I see you bringing across the need to have good governance in a very light-hearted manner, which is what people can appreciate. You sit here and you chuckle, but at the same time, you make note of what is being said. Hello?
Yes, I agree. Thank you. You don't realize I've been trying to wrap this up a long time. When I said the signs of the end of times, that was my cutout line.
Yeah, well, I deliberately ignored you because I'm approaching the end here. Ryan Jabon says, thinking of past the gym, I will never drink Kool-Aid again. Okay, I think that's just about going to do it. But thanks a lot, AB. Appreciate your Thursday morning visit. Now go take care of your little puppy. And is that a little one or a big one?
Huge.
Huge. Stay away from B's property. He has a huge dog out
there. Yeah. Apparently it's now electrified through kite string.
So be on guard. Be on guard. Thanks a lot, AB. Good to see you, fella.
Okay, bye now.
Okay, there he goes. Mr. Allan Baczynski bringing us to the end of today's program. But let's take one more quick little break here, and then we'll come on back. Hold on a sec. Anthony de Riggs on Facebook here says, old people had a saying, we don't know if we coming or going. Yes, Anthony, I've heard that one before. Jennifer Meyer says, good morning to you, George. Nice to be here this morning with the change in time. I'm missing the live show. Have a blessed day. Jennifer, remember, if you missed the live program, you can always go on back, check it out in our archives. Pilgrims, quick break. Here we go.
Start the stride to a healthy lifestyle at the 2019 annual Pump It Up Family Fun Walk. There'll be more fun, more smiles, and more prizes for families and friends. Join us in Carriacou on April 7th at 4 p.m. as we walk from the Harveyvale playing field to the Hillsborough tennis courts. And in Grenada on April 28th at 4 p.m. from the Montrouge playing field to the National Cricket Stadium. Packages cost $20 per person for up to 2 individuals and $15 per person for groups of 3 or more. Come out in your numbers to help us raise funds towards re-establishing the Carlton Home.
Welcome home.
Gudday chocolates, cocoa nibs, and cocoa balls from Diamond Estate Grenada are now available at Amazon.com, Amazon.ca, Amazon.co.uk, and GrenadaMarket.com. Try the sensational touch of nutmeg and a touch of ginger chocolates, 75% dark and rich, 100% pure cocoa, and their 60% dark and sweet chocolate bars today. Amazon Prime members enjoy free shipping on these orders in the USA, Canada, and Europe. GrenadaMarket.com. When you can't come to the island, the products of the island will come to you.
Alrighty, folks, just about time to pull the curtain down. It's, let's see here, 5 minutes after the hour. As we always do, one parting word from the Holy Scriptures. And today, it comes to you from Isaiah chapter 1, verses 16 to 20. Wash and make yourselves clean. Take your evil deeds out of my sight. Stop doing wrong. Learn to do right. Seek justice. Defend the oppressed. Take up the cause of the fatherless. Plead the case of the widow. Come now, let us settle the matter, says the Lord. Though your sins are like scarlet, they shall be as white as snow. Though they are as red as crimson, they shall be like wool. If you are willing and obedient, you will eat the good things of the land. But if you resist and rebel, you will be devoured by the sword. For the mouth of the Lord has spoken. Isaiah 1, 16 to 20. Back here to Facebook. Beverly Mitchell is saying good morning. Hello, Beverly. Hilda Wells is saying good morning for the first time. Nice to have you on board, Wells. And Ryan Jaban is saying have a blessed day. Pilgrims, time for Georgie Porchy to hightail it out of here. Thank you so much for joining me. And a reminder, it's still a few days off, but don't forget to join us on Sunday morning for the next edition of Sundays with George Grant. And, of course, tomorrow morning, we'll all be back here, minus AB, for the next edition of Gudday Grenada. God bless you.